Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Whitfield and thank you for joining me in my conference. My presentation is going to be on the differences between the Greek and Roman mythology, and I thought it would be appropriate to name my project Dude, the Romans Stole My Religion. The subject is interesting to me because as a child we were taught all the Greek gods by our teachers. We watched Hercules when Disney released the film, and even at current day TV, Once Upon a Time is delving into the underworld with Hades. Our lives are intertwined with the stories and knowledge of the Greeks, but the Romans are almost never mentioned. When I do think of the Romans, I tend to think of them as Greeks 2.0, but with a different headquarters. This presentation will help you understand the distinct differences between the two cultures by taking a look at their religions. Greek mythology predates Roman mythology by about 700 to 1,000 years. Greek mythology gave their gods a physical appearance, while the Romans only represented their gods in their imagination. Greek gods are based on human traits like love, hate, and honor, while the Roman gods are based on objects like ocean and sky. The Greek civilization began in 1000 BC and ended in 146 BC, when the Romans conquered. The Roman civilization began in 753 BC, with the legend of Romulus and Remus being raised by wolves, and ended in 476 AD, which is widely considered the beginning of the Dark Ages. The end of the Greek era did not mean the instant beginning of the Roman era. They overlapped for about 600 years instead. Greek mythology may have also originated from the Egyptians, who lived long before the Greeks and Romans, and also believed in a wide variety of gods. However, their mythology wasn't nearly as similar as the Greeks and Romans is to each other. My specific question is asking if the Romans created their own religion that happened to be similar to the Greeks, or did they adapt the Greek mythology to fit their lifestyles? Knowing the answer to this will allow future scholars to adjust their anthropological research on the mythology involved in this era, and can also help them to distinguish any cultural differences or similarities in items discovered from that time period. The Roman name for the goddess Aphrodite is Venus, who is the goddess of love. Apollo/Phoebus Apollo is the god of the sun. Ares/Mars is the god of war. Artemis/Diana is the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, childbirth, and plague. Athena/Minerva is the goddess of wisdom. Demeter/Ceres is the goddess of crops. Dionysus/Bacchus is the god of wine. Eros/Cupid is the god of love. And Hades/Pluto is the god of the underworld. Hecate/Trivia is the goddess of witchcraft. Helios/Sol is the god of the sun. Hephaestus/Vulcan is the god of the fire and the forge. Hera/Juno, queen of the gods and the wife of Zeus. Hermes/Mercury is the messenger of the gods. Nike/Victoria is the goddess of victory. Pan/Faunus is the god of the woods and pastures. Poseidon/Neptune, the god of the sea. And Zeus/Jupiter is the king of all gods. Deities were important for the progression of life in Greek mythology, but mortals were just as important, since it was their contribution in society that mattered in the end. In Roman mythology, the heroic deeds of gods were more important, as the actions of mortals did not matter once good status in the afterlife had been achieved. Both the Greek and Roman religions were deeply embedded in their lives. Every house in Greece would have a statue of at least one deity, and every Roman household would hold prayers to the gods multiple times a day. There would be many temples around the Greek cities, all devoted to individual gods, whereas the Romans would keep their sculptures to the gods to a minimum. Great battles would be carved out realistic in Roman cultures, while the Greeks would depict their gods as a metaphor for people. In Greek mythology, the afterlife does not hold much importance. In fact, gods and mortals are regularly snatched from the afterlife and brought into the present, showing no concern for the afterlife. The Greek perspective is much more concerned with the physical life on earth as opposed to the afterlife. Mortals are remembered and rewarded for their good deeds on earth. In contradiction, the Romans did good deeds to secure their place in heaven. Within this religion, the gods control the final outcome of everything. The priests in the gods' temples convey the gods' wishes, and within the rest of the humans, the men were the ones who did all the religious things like visit temples and give tribute. The women were not allowed to go out in public too much. Every disaster that needed explaining was explained with a story about the gods. An earthquake meant the gods were fighting, hurricanes meant the sea god was angry, infertility meant you made the god of childbearing angry, and lightning meant the god of lightning was very pissed at the city. The only way to appease the gods was to give tribute at that certain god's temple. The 4th century BC was an era described as the Greeks' Golden Age. Art, theater, music, poetry, philosophy, and political experiments such as democracy all flourished. The Greek influence stretched along the northern rim of the Mediterranean from the shores of Asia Minor to the Italian peninsula in what is now modern-day Europe. The Greeks worked a typical day of 6 hours, from dawn to noon, then relaxed from noon to night. Most meals consisted of wine, bread, and fish for dinners. Fully 1/4 of the population was made up of slaves, usually prisoners captured during the many clashes that extended the Greek influence overseas. These slaves provided much of the manpower that fueled the growing economy, working in shipyards, quarries, mines, and as domestic servants. The Romans had an almost identical workday, beginning around 6 and only working about 6 hours. Their meals were also almost identical and involved a lot of fish and wine. They were also thought to have 1/4 of the population be slaves who were captured from battle, sold into slavery, or born into slavery. However, they had the sewer systems built. The Greeks have huge numbers of stories and tales from their gods, ranging from the birth of Athena by jumping out of Zeus's head to the love triangle between Hephaestus, Ares, and Aphrodite. The Romans only have a handful of unique stories involving Romulus and Remus, but every other story involving a god is exactly the same as its Greek counterpart. Hercules was the Roman name for the son of the top god and immortal. Heracles was the Greek name for the son of the top god and immortal. Most people get these two confused, or don't even know that they're the same person, but they're actually quite interchangeable. The Romans took the stories and literally just changed the names, and voila, a new character in a different religion. I would like to further research the behavioral aspect of the mythology. Did the people who followed one religion transition to the other easily? The timing would make it possible since they overlapped, but did they do that at all? Did people follow both mythologies, or just choose one, if they were even allowed to choose? So in conclusion, the Romans are very similar to the Greeks. They share the same gods, have the same traditions, and even overlapped in their timeline. However, the Romans have a different cultural significance behind their religion than the Greeks do. They value their gods in thought, not in image. I feel that the only reason the Greeks are more prominent in our present day is because they were chosen to be physically depicted in movies and books, and this couldn't be done from the Romans' religion. This project could not have been completed without the primary and secondary sources found online and in my roommate's book collection. The book Zeus Grants Stupid Wishes, A Guide to World Mythology is a very good read and very informative on the tales in all the world's main mythologies. The website Diffin was also very valuable in comparing cultures in a subjective manner.